Welcome back to Science and Engineering, the guide. In this video, we'll be talking about the 4 post-experimentation parts of your project. These are the conclusion, the real-world application, recommendations, and the bibliography. With the completion of these 4 parts of your project, you'll be ready to move on to developing your final report. First, let's start off with conclusion. So the main purpose of your conclusion is to accomplish 2 tasks. 1, to compare your findings to your hypothesis, and 2, to sum up your experiment. Between these 2 tasks, you'll have a complete conclusion. To compare the hypothesis to your findings, you first need to make sense of your findings. This is where your data analysis comes in. And this is why you should have completed your data analysis before you start writing your conclusion. So once you've analyzed your data, you'll be able to figure out whether your hypothesis was correct or incorrect. Remember, your hypothesis was the guess that you made all the way at the beginning on whether your on how you were going to answer your scientific question. So you can start off your conclusion with a brief rundown of what your project is actually testing. This will help to solve task number 2, to sum up your experiment. After this, you can state your hypothesis and explain whether your hypothesis was true or not. And make sure you support this with data from your actual experiment. So this is where the results and data analysis part of your experiment will come in. In other words, you need to use your data as evidence to support whether or not your hypothesis accurately predicted the outcome of your experiment. Make sure that you're honest. Your hypothesis does not have to be correct. Remember, it was just an educated guess. In this section of your conclusion, you might also find it helpful to reiterate the points in your data analysis to prove whether your hypothesis was correct or not. And with that, you've completed your conclusion. So this is an example of how your conclusion would look. First, we introduce our conclusion by talking about the main point from your data analysis. Then you restate your hypothesis word for word. After that, you see whether your hypothesis was either supported by your results or unsupported by your results, and state that very, very clearly, and reference the specific part in your results that proves or disproves your hypothesis. Afterwards, you need to explain how you know that your results prove or disprove your hypothesis. This is basically a short summary of your data analysis part. So after your data analysis part, you can sum up your experiment once again and talk about the significance of study and the real-world application. The latter is what we'll discuss in the remainder part of this video. But all in all, your conclusion is basically a summary of all the different parts of your final report, all the different parts of your experiment that you've completed, all put into one small paragraph. Pratham is now going to continue with the real-world application part.
So the real-world application of your project is an explanation of how the results of your project will be used in the real world. To reiterate, this explanation describes how others can use the conclusion or data that you obtain from this project. This is not to be confused with the significance of the study. The significance of the study explains why you're doing your project and who it will benefit. The significance of study is more of a preliminary description that occurs before actually getting into the main parts of your project. But the real-world application is more along the lines of how the conclusion or outcome of the project can be used or implemented in the real world. If this still doesn't make sense, here's an analogy. Pretend someone gives you a random tool, except you've never seen this tool before and you don't know how or where to use it. This symbolizes your project. You've developed a conclusion and you've answered your scientific question. But how can you use that concluded information or answer in the real world? So now I'm going to show you guys an example. So this is the example of the real world application. And so we can see here how over here we're connecting, we're starting off our real world application with a real life problem of global warming and how car engines contribute carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which causes global warming. And so we're using this problem and we're implementing the idea that our project helps a certain aspect of car engines and this will mitigate climate change in some fashion. Now, Jay will talk about the recommendations.
The recommendations of a project explain suggestions on how the experimenter could have changed certain aspects of their procedure or design in experiment. These changes are usually to enhance the accuracy of the results from the experiment. The recommendations also enlist any possibilities for further study related to this project. Recommendations are generally short, but that doesn't neglect its importance. Having definite recommendations shows that you identified parts of your experiment that could have been sources of error, which could obviously skew your data. So basically, recommendation is your take on what you would do to make your project better if you would do your project again for better results. This is important because it shows that you truly understand the scientific method and how it applies to your project. Developing possibilities of further study shows how your project can expand into more projects and expand its impact on the world. Furthermore, it shows your curiosity in trying to answer more questions in regards to your topic of your project. This is an example of a recommendation. And as you can see, this basically shows what we could do to improve the project. Next, Siddharth will talk about our final topic in this video, the bibliography.
The bibliography consists of all the different sources that you use throughout your project. This is why we've repeated multiple times to write down your sources throughout the course of this guide. Readily having all of your sources in a list makes the bibliography the most simple part of your project. At most, the only thing you have to do is format your sources into APA format. In fact, you can even format your sources in Google Docs. You just go to the tools in the taskbar up top and click on citations. I will also go through this as an example in a bit. So here's an example of a bibliography. As mentioned, this bibliography includes a list of the used sources in APA format. It's pretty self-explanatory. You literally just have to list everything in the correct format. But a little bit more on the formatting. So here I have a link that I used to research into my project. And here's how you can turn it into a citation. So first you'll have to copy the link, and as I mentioned earlier, you can go up to the tools bar up here and click on citations, and then you can click on add a citation source. So here you'll have to put, well, since this is a link, I'll have to put a website, and I accessed it through a website. And that's why I copy and pasted the link, so I can put it in here. You can search it up, and you'll usually get this. Some things will sometimes be missing, and if you can find it on the website, then you can cite manually down here, or if you just press continue, you should be able to put it in here. But sometimes you won't be able to. But if you can't find it, it's okay. As long as you can cite with whatever information is given, that should be fine. So then you just click add citation source, and then that's it. You just click cite, and there you go. And then obviously this looks a little bit different because I think the font sizes the font sizes should be a little bit different, I think. But yeah, there you go. That's how you cite a website. Okay, we just went over quite a few things, so here's a quick recap of each topic. Firstly, the conclusion explains whether or not your initial hypothesis was accurate in predicting the outcome of the experiment by using the data from your experiment as support. Secondly, the real-world application determines how the outcome or conclusion of your project can be used or implemented in the real world. Then, the recommendations describe suggestions for changes to be made to your experiment and possibilities for further study related to the topic of your project. Finally, the bibliography consists of a list of all the sources used in your project. These sources should be listed in APA format. So here's the document that you'll be given to put all your 4 descriptions on. As you can see, the document is split into 4 sections. There's 1 section for each description. Each section also includes a brief explanation of what that description should include. So right here, it gives you for conclusion, recommendation down here, and as well for the other 2. In case you need a refresher, there are links up here that take you to the Science Buddies page for both the conclusion and the bibliography. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. This document just provides a template for you to paste in these 4 descriptions into one place, which will make it easier for when you have to paste it into your final report in the near future. And that brings us to the end of this video. Our next video will cover everything in regards to the final stage of your projects. We hope to see you there. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email us or drop a comment below. This is the Science Squad signing off. See you in the next one.